The diplomatic cruiser sliced through the atmosphere of Zoran Prime, the capital world of the most formidable empire in the known galaxy. In the cockpit, Commander Donald Grant watched as the fiery skies cleared to reveal a sprawling metropolis below, cold, calculated, and all too alien. This was a city that had known power and war, not compromise. Its skyline was dominated by a single structure, one far larger and more imposing than any Earth monument. The Imperial Castle, an intimidating maze of towers and spires where the alien Emperor Exery held his court. The moment his cruiser touched down on the landing pad, Donald could feel the hostile energy radiating from the building like heat from a furnace. He straightened his uniform, glancing at his reflection in the polished metal surface of the hatch before it opened. His face was hard, set like stone, a mask honed by years of dealing with planetary governments, rebel factions, and military councils. But this was different. There was an unspoken weight on his shoulders. No human had ever dared to enter the inner sanctum of the Zoraean Dominion, least of all with the intention of forcing their terms on its emperor. The hatch opened with a hiss, and Donald was greeted by an entourage of the alien emperor's finest guards, their armor gleaming in the dim light. Their gazes were fixed on him with barely concealed contempt. The Zoraean were a towering species, humanoid but larger, with skin that shifted in hues of violet and blue, reflecting their moods like clouds in a storm. The guard in front, taller than the others, and clearly the commander, snarled as Donald stepped forward. "Welcome, human," the alien commander intoned, his voice a low growl that vibrated through the air. "I am Warlord Nkor, First Blade of Emperor Exery. You will show respect in his presence, or you will answer to me." Donald offered a curt nod, hiding the surge of adrenaline thrumming in his veins. "Respect is earned, Warlord, not given." Nkor's eyes narrowed, the violet in his skin flaring brighter. He gestured, and his guard surrounded Donald, escorting him toward the castle's entrance. The winding corridors were lined with ornate murals depicting centuries of Zoraean conquests, galactic battles, subjugated planets, alien species forced into submission. Donald could feel the weight of these silent reminders pressing in on him, but he kept his expression impassive, his thoughts focused on the mission. As they walked, the walls seemed to tighten around him. The narrow passageways, dark and carved with intricate patterns, had a sinister beauty. He noticed how each detail reinforced the power of the Zoraean, creating an atmosphere thick with superiority and disdain. Donald's calm expression belied his sharp awareness of every movement, every muscle twitch of the guards who flanked him. His hand brushed lightly against the concealed device in his pocket, a reminder of the hidden power he'd brought with him. At last, they reached the throne room, an immense hall whose ceilings stretched impossibly high, supported by arches that gleamed with precious metals and gemstones. At the far end, seated on a throne sculpted from the bones of conquered creatures, sat Emperor Exery. The alien ruler was a towering figure, his body adorned with armor that glowed with embedded crystals, symbols of his victories. His gaze was sharp, cold, and assessing as it fixed upon Donald with a hint of amusement. "Commander Grant," the Emperor's voice echoed through the hall, smooth and chilling. "To what do I owe the pleasure of this unprecedented human visit?" Donald stepped forward, his boots clicking against the polished obsidian floor. He held the Emperor's gaze unwavering. "I'm here to discuss humanity's future in this galaxy, Emperor Exery. I'm here to negotiate." The Emperor's lips curled into what might have been a smile, though it held no warmth. "Negotiate? Humans have an untested grasp of such matters. We have watched your species for a long time, and frankly, I find your kind sense of self-importance almost amusing." His voice turned icy. "But it is not worthy of my empire's attention." The words were calculated, a dismissal designed to provoke. But Donald felt only a simmering calm. He knew exactly why he was here and what was at stake. A thin, almost imperceptible smile played on his lips as he replied, "Self-importance isn't what brought me here, Emperor. It was necessity. I represent humanity's refusal to submit to any empire, especially not one that views us as lesser beings." A ripple of shock ran through the room, reflected in the glances exchanged between the guards. The Emperor's expression, however, remained unreadable. "Ah, I see," HFY murmured. "The stubborn nature of youth. I suppose your planet has come to plead for mercy." Donald held his gaze unflinching. Then he let the silence stretch, watching as the Emperor's confidence flickered ever so slightly. Donald leaned forward, his voice low, deliberate, and cutting through the tension like a blade. "We don't plead, Emperor, and we certainly don't beg." He straightened, his voice ringing out. "We don't negotiate either, not with words." The Emperor's expression shifted, his smile fading. A flicker of uncertainty danced across his eyes. Donald didn't let it linger. He reached into his jacket, withdrawing a small device, a signal that sent a pulse through the castle's heavily shielded walls. A flash of realization sparked in HFY's eyes as the guards tensed, their weapons ready, but Donald's calm stance held them in place. The ground beneath them vibrated. In the hallways, outside the throne room, a series of explosions thundered through the castle. Automated drones and armed soldiers hidden within the diplomatic cruiser's hull had broken free, scattering into the corridors in perfect coordination. Donald knew his team was moving fast, advancing on strategic points throughout the castle. Emperor HFY rose from his throne, his gaze fixed on Donald with barely restrained fury. "You dare bring violence into my halls?" Donald met the Emperor's anger with cold, unyielding defiance. "You brought this on yourself, HFY. Humanity won't bend to conquerors. If you want our respect, you'll earn it." The Emperor's fingers twitched, his hand moving toward his own weapon. But Donald's soldiers had already stormed the throne room, their guns raised, surrounding the Emperor in a tight formation. Silence blanketed the room, a heavy, ominous quiet. Donald's gaze bore into the Emperor's, and for the first time, he saw doubt flicker in the alien's eyes. With a voice as steady as steel, Donald declared, "We're taking our future back, Emperor. Humanity's terms are non-negotiable." And with that, the standoff ended as abruptly as it had begun. The guards watched uncertain as Donald and his team stood ready for what would come next. The Emperor, his once unshakable confidence shaken, now faced humanity's resolve, a force he had vastly underestimated. The lines were drawn, the stakes unmistakable, and the battle for control of the galaxy had only just begun. The tension in the throne room snapped like a taut wire as the explosions reverberated through the castle's thick walls. Stone and metal trembled in unison, the once immaculate corridors now shrouded in smoke. Outside the throne room, the Zorean guards were scrambling, their disciplined ranks broken as human drones and soldiers descended upon them with ruthless efficiency. Commander Donald Grant felt the shift, a subtle but undeniable tip of the scales in humanity's favor. As he held his ground, his team moved through the castle in a wave. Each unit, carrying advanced weaponry humanity, had guarded closely, revealing it now as an answer to centuries of Zorean dominance. Unseen by the aliens, Donald's soldiers wielded plasma rifles that could punch through reinforced armor and compact drones with advanced targeting algorithms that hunted down targets with pinpoint accuracy. "Commander," came a voice over Donald's earpiece, breaking the tense silence. "We're in position at the south corridor and moving toward the main control room." Donald nodded. "Proceed as planned. Minimal casualties. We're here to make a statement, not a massacre." In response, he could hear the faint sounds of affirmative acknowledgments from his team. They moved like ghosts, shadows slipping past the chaos erupting among the Zorean defenders. The alien's confidence, that deep-seated arrogance Donald had felt the moment he stepped into the Imperial castle, was cracking. As the sounds of rapid-fire plasma rifles echoed down the hallways, Donald's gaze drifted toward Emperor HFY, who still sat upon his throne, his rigid expression betraying only a hint of unease. His Imperial Guard stood at attention, weapons at the ready, but they were not trained for this kind of enemy. Humanity's technology was not just sophisticated. It was unpredictable. It didn't follow the orderly, predictable patterns the Zorean military had spent centuries mastering. Your insolence is unfathomable, human. Emperor Xeri's voice cut through the growing sounds of battle. His eyes, glowing with the familiar violet hue of anger, were fixed on Donald. Did you truly believe you could storm my empire's heart and survive? Donald met his gaze with a calm fierceness. I didn't come to survive, Emperor. I came to show you who we are. Suddenly, a drone, sleek, spherical, and bristling with sensors, shot into the throne room, hovering just above Donald's shoulder. Its targeting light flicked across each Zoran guard, mapping their positions with clinical precision. The guards shifted uneasily, their confidence slipping with every second the silent machine floated between them. The lethal threat it posed unmistakable. Outside the throne room, the castle continued to fall into chaos. Human soldiers in their exoskeleton suits moved with inhuman speed, each step heavy with the weight of hydraulic-powered limbs and the deadly intentions they carried. Plasma beams lit the hallways, cutting through Zoran defenses, who could only attempt to regroup under this unrelenting assault. Donald's forces spread out, gaining control of strategic choke points and disabling security systems with a ruthless efficiency. Warlord Nkor, who had initially escorted Donald into the castle, was among the first to realize the danger. He roared orders to his men, his voice struggling to rise above the din of battle. Hold your positions. They are few. We are the might of Zoran, but the words, once enough to rouse courage, now fell hollow against the sounds of human weaponry cutting through the alien ranks. Inside the throne room, the Emperor's composure began to crack. He rose from his throne, gesturing with a hand that bore symbols of his victories. Crimson crystals and ornate rings, tokens of his absolute power. His voice was both furious and disbelieving. You are a fool, Donald Grant. You bring destruction into my home, threaten my empire, and yet you believe you will not be crushed. Donald allowed himself a small smile, one that held no mirth. This isn't destruction, Emperor. This is reclamation. Humanity refuses to be ruled, and I came here to make sure you understand that. At his words, another signal pulsed through the room, and the doors burst open as a fresh wave of human soldiers surged in, their rifles raised, their eyes focused on the Emperor and his guards. The Zoran defenders, their violet skin glowing with the frantic rhythms of fear, raised their weapons, but they were no match for the coordinated might of humanity's advanced technology and relentless determination. Donald's second-in-command, Lieutenant Abigail Jones, strode in, her plasma rifle pointed directly at the Emperor's guard captain. "Positions are secured, Commander," she reported, her tone as steady as her grip on her weapon. "The control room is under our command, and resistance has been significantly reduced." Emperor Xeri's eyes flared, an expression of both fury and horror. "You dare." "Yes." Abigail cut him off sharply, her voice cold and steady. "We dare." For a brief moment, a silence fell over the throne room, as if the castle itself were holding its breath. The Emperor's gaze darted from Donald to Abigail, from the human soldiers who surrounded him to the destruction he could hear echoing through his castle. The full extent of his mistake, the underestimation of humanity, the assumption of his empire's invincibility, was dawning on him. Warlord Nkor, unwilling to watch the humiliation of his emperor, lunged forward with a fierce snarl, his weapon raised. But Donald's drone, its targeting laser already locked onto the warlord, fired a beam of concentrated plasma, striking him before he could take another step. Nkor collapsed to the floor, his face frozen in shock, his powerful frame suddenly still. The Zoran guards, witnessing their commander's swift demise, faltered. They tightened their grips on their weapons, but the fire in their eyes had dimmed. This wasn't a fight they could win. It was a fight to survive. Emperor Xeri took a slow step back, his once commanding presence diminished. "Do you truly wish to bring ruin to my people, Donald Grant? I could offer you wealth, resources." "We didn't come for wealth," Donald said, his voice calm, unyielding. "We came to show you that humanity is not yours to control. We stand for ourselves, and any empire that refuses to accept that will face the same fate." The Emperor's shoulders sagged, the proud gleam in his eyes extinguished, leaving only a stunned resentment. For the first time in his reign, he stood powerless before an enemy he could not cow with threats or bribes. Donald turned to his soldiers, giving a single nod. The team tightened their formation, ensuring that the Emperor and his remaining guards were firmly within their sights. The throne room, once the seat of alien power, was now under human control. They had taken it, one calculated move at a time. With the Emperor subdued, Donald allowed himself a single deep breath, a calm acceptance settling over him. This was the beginning of a new era, a declaration that humanity would not just survive in this galaxy. They would carve out their own place on their own terms. As Donald's gaze swept over the defeated Zorayan leader, his mission took on a final, chilling clarity. Humanity would no longer be relegated to the fringes of this galaxy. They would rise, and the galaxy would learn to respect them, one empire at a time. As the last echoes of human gunfire faded, an unnatural stillness settled over the imperial castle, thick with smoke and the remnants of Zorayan pride. The throne room, once a hallowed symbol of dominance, lay battered under the boots of human soldiers. But the battle was far from over. Outside, the Zorayan soldiers, reinforcements from nearby strongholds, swarmed into the castle grounds, forming a defensive wall around the entrances. Commander Donald Grant, positioned at the throne room's entrance, knew this wouldn't be a simple extraction. The Zorayan would rather die than witness their emperor fall into human hands. Their forces had been caught off guard, yes, but now desperation ignited their spirits. And desperation could be a weapon as potent as any technology. A rapid series of commands came over Donald's earpiece. Commander, we've got Zorayan squadrons converging on all main exits. They're armed to the teeth, sir. It's going to get ugly. Donald tightened his grip on his plasma rifle, scanning the chaos outside through the castle's fortified windows. The Zorayan warriors were forming ranks, their towering figures like immovable stone statues, faces set in grim determination. They were armed with heavy particle cannons, weapons powerful enough to tear through the human exoskeleton suits if given the chance. With them was a figure Donald hadn't expected to see, High Warden Connor, the Emperor's most loyal general, a seasoned warrior renowned across the galaxy for his brutal tactics and unrelenting loyalty. Connor raised his weapon, his voice booming through a loudspeaker embedded in his armor. Humans, you have violated the sacred halls of Zorayan. Surrender now, or you and your people will be obliterated. Donald's second-in-command, Lieutenant Abigail Jones, turned to him, her expression one of fierce resolve. Orders, Commander? He glanced back at her, his gaze unwavering. We're not leaving without making our point, Lieutenant. The Emperor must understand that humanity will not be cowed. They want to fight? Let's give them one. Abigail's mouth quirked into a determined grin as she relayed the command, her fingers flying across her communicator. Almost immediately, the hum of human plasma rifles charged the air, each soldier taking a position around the throne room, creating a defensive perimeter. Their weapons gleamed, reflecting the flickering lights from the battle-torn room, as they prepared for the Zorayan onslaught. The doors trembled as a forceful impact shook the room. Zorayan soldiers had begun their assault, relentless and fearless. The doorway, once a symbol of imperial dominance, was now a choke point, a brutal bottleneck that Abigail and the human soldiers used to their advantage. The first wave of Zorayan warriors burst through, their energy shields flickering as they advanced under a rain of plasma fire. Donald watched as the shields absorbed the first barrage, only to buckle under the concentrated fire of human rifles, disintegrating in a flash of light. High Warden Connor forced his way through the press of his soldiers, his enormous frame cutting a path through the carnage. He moved with a brutal efficiency, wielding an energy staff that glowed with a fierce white light. The Zorayan were masters of close combat, and Connor exemplified that mastery. With a savage swipe, he disarmed the human soldier, sending him sprawling. The warden's voice thundered again as he moved forward. You think your weapons make you strong, human? It is our spirit, our unity, that makes us undefeatable. Donald grimaced as Connor advanced, realizing that the warden was turning the tide. The Zorayan warriors, encouraged by their leader's unyielding resolve, were gaining ground despite the withering human gunfire. He could see the impact on his own soldiers, their faces hardening with determination, but also showing the signs of fatigue. They had been trained for close-quarters combat, but the Zorayan's sheer numbers and unbreakable spirit were pushing them to their limits. Just as the Zorayan forces surged forward, Abigail activated a hidden command on her device. Tiny, hovering drones launched from her belt, whirring into the fray. Each drone was equipped with micro-explosives, capable of targeting and neutralizing individual Zorayan soldiers. The drones zipped through the air, evading swings from energy staffs and shields, each explosive detonation a burst of light and force. For a moment, the Zorayan advance stalled, disoriented by the unexpected attack. Donald saw his opportunity. "Focus fire on Connor," he ordered, gesturing toward the towering warden, whose armor was scorched but unyielding. His guards, no less fierce, shielded him, interposing themselves between the humans and their leader with absolute dedication. As human plasma rifles unleashed concentrated fire on Connor's position, his energy staff spun in a deadly arc, deflecting some of the beams, while others struck his armor, which flared with reactive energy shields. His bellow of defiance echoed through the room. "We will not fall." But Donald was unrelenting. He knew that Connor's defeat would be a blow to the Zorayan morale, a crack in the unity that bound them together so tightly. He stepped forward, shouldering his rifle and taking aim, his gaze meeting Connor's across the chaotic battlefield. The warden's eyes gleamed with fury, a silent promise of vengeance for every inch of ground Donald's team had taken. Donald fired, his shot striking Connor's staff just as the warden swung it to block another attack. The staff splintered, sparks flying as the energy core within shattered. Connor staggered, a look of stunned disbelief on his face as the remains of his once indomitable weapon clattered to the floor. For a moment, the battle froze. The Zorayan soldiers stared, their eyes flickering between their fallen warden and the human commander who had dared to strike him down. "Your warden fought bravely," Donald called out, his voice carrying through the room. "But his bravery will not bring him victory today. The galaxy is changing. Humanity will stand, and any empire that seeks to conquer us will fall." The Zorayan warriors hesitated, their leader defeated, their unity shaken. One by one, they began to lower their weapons, their faces etched with exhaustion and reluctant respect. They had fought, and they had lost. For the first time in their empire's long, unchallenged history, they had been forced to surrender. Emperor Exari watched the scene with a barely concealed fury. His empire, his invincible legions, humbled. Donald turned to him, his voice resolute. "This is what humanity is capable of. This is what you invited when you dismissed us as lesser beings." In that moment, the Emperor's veneer of unassailable power cracked. His gaze dropped ever so slightly as the reality of his defeat took hold. And in that small gesture, Donald saw the shift he'd been fighting for. The Zorayan's realization that they would not reign unchallenged. But the battle wasn't over yet. The Emperor was silent, but Donald could see the glint of defiance still in his eyes. There would be no simple surrender, no easy conclusion to the struggle. And as Donald's soldiers secured the throne room, he knew they had only just begun to rewrite the balance of power in the galaxy. The humans had taken their stand, and the galaxy's greatest empire would never be the same. Donald Grant stood amid the ruins of the Zorayan throne room, his gaze fixed on Emperor Exari, whose silence was as formidable as the chaos that had erupted moments before. The once grand chamber now lay in shambles, filled with the scorched scent of plasma and the weight of shattered pride. Zorayan soldiers, the few who still held their ground, formed a tense line between their emperor and the human forces, though even they knew it was a losing stand. The emperor, adorned in regal armor that shimmered with defiant radiance, stood taller than them all, eyes like molten silver narrowed on Donald. Emperor Xeri, Donald said, voice unwavering, each word carrying the weight of humanity's struggle. This is over. Your empire, your soldiers, this battle has been won. Humanity has proven that we are not to be ruled. Xeri's gaze darkened, his expression sharp and unyielding. You speak of battles as though they end in a single day, human. You may hold my throne room, but you have not conquered my empire. Donald took a step forward, the glint of resolve in his eyes unmoved by the Emperor's cold defiance. This isn't about conquering, he replied. This is about showing that we will not bend. We didn't come here to submit. We came here to live freely, without the shadow of your rule. The Emperor's lips twisted into a scornful smirk. Freely? You are delusional if you think freedom is anything but a myth. Power dictates freedom, and I hold that power. For a brief moment, Donald let the Emperor's words hang in the air, scrutinizing the face of the tyrant who had for so long kept humanity in check. Xeri's pride, Donald realized, ran deeper than his throne, deeper than even his control over the galaxy's outer sectors. It was woven into the fabric of his empire, an empire built on the belief that only the Zoran could rule. Donald's jaw tightened. Power alone doesn't make you deserving of control, Xeri. The galaxy isn't yours simply because you took it. That reign of entitlement ends here. Behind Donald, Lieutenant Abigail Jones and the other soldiers spread out, securing the room. Abigail's gaze remained fixed on the Emperor, her posture unflinching, her weapon trained as a silent warning. The Emperor's own guards, though visibly shaken, were equally committed, their loyalty sealing them in place between humanity and their leader. Xeri raised his chin, his voice filled with contempt. I have faced countless rebellions, Commander Grant. None have succeeded. None have broken the will of Zoran. Your kind is no different. You will fade as all others have. Perhaps others underestimated you, Donald replied calmly, but humanity has faced destruction before, and each time we rose stronger than before. We came here to make sure you understand that. Xeri's silver eyes flickered with something akin to amusement. Such grand declarations. But tell me, Commander, what will you do now? Will you kill me? He gestured to his guards. End my life here, in front of the last of my people. The silence that followed was heavy. Each word the Emperor spoke like bait, testing Donald's resolve. But Donald saw through Xeri's veiled tactic. Killing the Emperor here, in cold blood, would grant him martyrdom, a symbol of humanity's brutality and disrespect, something the Zoran would cling to and rally around for generations. No! Donald needed more than that. He needed the Emperor to acknowledge humanity's right to be free. I'm not here to take your life, Donald answered, his voice unwavering. I'm here to take your word. Humanity wants only what's ours, our freedom, our place in this galaxy. Give us that, or continue a fight you know will destroy your empire from within. Xeri's expression remained stoic, but Donald could see the faintest tremor in his hands, the slightest crack in his granite mask. The Emperor's silence wasn't one of defiance, it was calculation. Donald had struck the heart of the matter, and Xeri knew it. His empire, once unassailable, was now vulnerable, surrounded by beings he'd ruled through intimidation and manipulation. The arrival of humanity, their resilience, had created a ripple that would grow into a wave, destabilizing his hold if he did not adapt. Slowly, Xeri inclined his head, his silver eyes narrowing as he considered his words. And if I grant you your freedom, what assurance do I have that humanity will not turn its newfound strength against me? Donald didn't hesitate. Humanity seeks peace, not conquest. We want our independence, and we want the galaxy to know we are not prey to be hunted. But if the Zoran leave us in peace, we will leave you in peace. However, if you attempt to control us again, know that we will not hold back. Xeri's lips pressed into a thin line. The tension in the room was a tangible thing, pressing down on everyone present, humans and Zoran alike. Finally, he gave a short, sharp nod. You speak with conviction, Commander. I did not expect such resolve from your kind. Very well, I will consider this truce. But know that should humanity betray my empire's generosity, you will be met with a retribution that even your people's stubborn resilience cannot withstand. Donald inclined his head, meeting the Emperor's gaze with unflinching resolve. Generosity has nothing to do with it. This is the beginning of a galaxy that will have to make room for both of us. In that moment, the silent soldiers on both sides began to lower their weapons, though not without lingering tension. Donald could see the mixture of fear and respect in the Zoraeans' eyes, the first cracks of understanding taking hold. They had seen humanity's power, tasted the bitterness of resistance, and knew that humanity was no longer a people to be dismissed or subjugated. Xeri's gaze swept over the room, his pride intact but tempered by a newfound wariness. For the first time, he was forced to acknowledge humanity as something more than a mere nuisance. "Commander Donald Grant," he intoned, his voice no longer filled with contempt, but with something closer to wary respect. "Let this day mark the beginning of our understanding. For now, we shall leave humanity in peace. But do not mistake this for mercy." Donald nodded, allowing himself a small, grim smile. "Not mercy, mutual respect." With a final, fierce glare, Xeri motioned to his guards. The defeated but unbroken Zoraean soldiers began to withdraw, their movements slow and reluctant as they followed their emperor out of the throne room. The once opulent space, now marked by destruction, was silent, filled with the weight of what had transpired. As Xeri's figure disappeared into the shadows beyond, Donald felt a profound stillness settle over him. Humanity had achieved what many thought impossible. They had confronted the galaxy's oldest empire and walked away with their independence intact. Turning to his soldiers, who stood at the ready, Donald's gaze softened. They had earned this victory, one that would ripple across the galaxy, inspiring others, rewriting the narrative of humanity's place in the cosmos. "Let's go home," Donald said, his voice a mixture of relief and unyielding resolve. "We've shown them what humanity is made of. Now, let them see what we can build